So for those of you who did not catch the last episode, which is up on YouTube if you want to go and check that out, excuse me, basically, we took a look from Kurisu's perspective. We saw Okabe return from the future with his memories and just kind of go from like acting normal to like flipping out because he saw Mayuri die dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of times, and he's not been able to save her. So that's currently where we're at there. And we had just had Ferris's butler knock Okabe out, and we are now relocating to Ferris's penthouse suite. So that's where we're at now. Akihabara Times Tower. It's the tallest condominium complex in Akihabara, complete with a view of Mount Fuji and Tokyo Tower from its top floors. And the top floor of this Akihabara station adjacent complex is Ferris's home. I must admit, a high-end condo with its own concierge service is certainly a much safer location than the lab's Okayama building. In fact, this might have been the safest place for Okabe, given everything that was going on. On her way, Ferris reached out to her father to make sure he was home. She told him to make certain arrangements and that she would fill him in on the details later.
Rumio!
Rumio, is that her real name? Ferris-san's father gave his daughter a big hug as he welcomed her home. Seeing a display of affection like this, one especially rare in Japan, fills my heart with a subtle, hard-to-describe emotion. I should be familiar with this. I know what the emotion's supposed to be, of course, but now's not the time to worry about it. I assist Kuroki in laying Okabe down in the bedroom. Kuroki tells me that he plans to call the family doctor later to give Okabe some sedatives. I sigh in relief. Then I return to the living room to formally introduce myself to Ferris's father. The man, having just finished hugging his daughter, smiled gently as he noticed me and enthusiastically offered his hand.
君がルミホの友人だね。秋葉ルミホの父、秋葉幸隆です。どうぞよろしく。
I shake his hand without hesitation. I've lived in America so long that it's almost uncomfortable meeting someone without a handshake.
マキセ、クリスです。
マキセ、クリスさん。
はい、そうですが。
Still holding my hand, Yukitaka Oji-sama tilts his head and looks at me. It seemed as though he was studying my face. Don't tell me he's one of those perverted old men. Just as I was about to ask Ferris for help, Yukitaka mentioned a name I didn't expect to hear.
君のお父さんは牧瀬正一という名前かな。
What?
どうしてパパの名前を。
やっぱりそうなんだね。そうか、あのクリスちゃんか。すごい偶然だな。こんなに立派になって。
パパ、マキセさんのこと知ってるの？
僕と牧瀬正一は大学時代の友人でね。
嘘。
しかも一時期は彼の研究に資金を提供していたこともあるんだ。僕がスポンサーで正一が実際に研究で成果を出す。アドバイザーとして僕ら二人の師匠ともいえる教授がついてくれてね。
好き。
I feel like I've heard this story before. It was the reason my family had to move to Aomori. At the time, we were living in Tokyo and Papa was an independent researcher. The reason we had to move to Aomori, where my father still lives, is because the funding he relied on was cut off. So this man...
僕らが大学を卒業してもその残業はしばらく続いたんだ。正一は相対性理論超越委員会と呼んでいたよ。
That's the first I've heard of that. What a name.
クリスちゃん。 君はよく僕らの家にも小一に連れられて遊びに来たことがあるんだよ。当時はお茶の水の方に家があってね、そこはうちの会社が傾きかけた時に売却したんだが、庭まであったんだ。そこで君とルミホは一緒に遊んでいたよ。
ということは私とナキセさんは幼馴染。
Ferris and I stared at each other in disbelief. So much has happened today that I feel like my nerves are about to short out.
というか黒木もそのことは覚えているはずだろう。気づかなかったのかい？
いいえ、気づいておりましたが、それよりも岡部様のことを優先いたしました。
そうか、ありがとう。娘の友人を介抱してくれて。さて、では本題に入ろう。
はい。
Yeah, right now, my papa's history and my unknown connection to Ferris are irrelevant. Right now, we need to keep our focus on Okabe.
すみません。急に頼ってしまって。
いや、頼ってもらってよかったようだよ。
His tone was cunning and sharp, as if he had transformed from an easygoing, nostalgic man who stood before me a moment ago. He was no longer a father, but a shrewd businessman. His gaze is sharp as a knife, his eyes are like a hawk's, taking in everything around him.
ルミホから連絡をもらった時は半信半疑だったけどね。念のためにお世話になっている人にお願いしたんだよ。
お世話になっている人です。
ああ、秋葉原で行われるお祭り、神田明神の神田祭りとかで夜店を出してくれる敵屋さんの元締めにちょっと話をしたのさ。びっくりしたよ、正直ね。確かに連絡があった通り、警察や鉄道会社に干渉があったらしい。元締めさんにも一応断りがあったそうでね。
My breath caught in my throat at what must have been the 1,000th shock for the day. It's not that I didn't believe Okabe, but to know for certain that CERN was actually able to influence organizations like the police leaves me shaking.
君たちが戻ってくるまでの間にいろいろと調べてみたら、そもそもこの秋葉原一帯を封鎖して出入りにも制限をかけてるみたいだ。見た目はそうじゃないけれど、まあ警察のやる検問と同じだね。多分それで秋葉原から出ようとするクリスちゃんや岡部君を捕捉しようとしたんだろう。
補足。
I shuddered. We've been targeted by a powerful organization. Given that Okabe, Hashida, and I were driving force behind the time machine, we must be their main focus. Thinking on it now makes me even more worried for Mayuri and Hashida's safety.
君たちは一体何に巻き込まれた？具体的に詳しい話を聞かせてほしい。一体この秋葉原の街で今何が起こっているのかを見極めるためにもね。
There was a subtle anger in Yukitaka's voice. It wasn't directed towards us. His anger was directed towards the intruders stomping through the place he lives, the place that he's built up and nurtured over the years. An anger born of the desire to protect the town he loves, like a mother bird defending her nest.
なるほど。
In the end, it took the three of us, Ferris, Kuroki, and me, over an hour to tell Yukitaka everything that was going on. Well, to the extent that we were capable, at least. Only one of us, the only one of us to time leap, witness Mayuri's numerous deaths, or know anything about CERN Rounders or the Committee of 300 was Okabe. Under normal circumstances, his testimony would be invaluable for clarifying certain details and verifying what he had to say, but given his unconsciousness and extreme mental fatigue, it simply was not an option. It's not surprising. The shock and despair he's gone through would be unbearable even for someone trained to cope with mental trauma. I'm only still standing right now because I'm focusing myself to think rationally, which is why we ended up talking and telling Yukitaka Okabe's story on our own. It was a long explanation fraught with false starts, speculation, and clarifications, but we finally finished. That said, Yukitaka's initial response didn't seem positive. He tilts his head down, frowns, and seems to lose himself in thought. He must not be able to believe it. No surprise there. It didn't come from Okabe, after all. It's hard to believe even coming from Okabe himself. I wouldn't have believed it myself if he weren't so desperate. I would have written it off as yet another Shunibyo fantasy, Otsu.
クリスちゃん
Yukitaka unexpectedly breaks the silence.
はい。
僕と君のお父さん翔一が大学生時代からの友人で彼の研究に出資していたとさっき話したね。
はい。
I thought I have to admit, I'm still having trouble believing that, comprehending it, whatever. It was when Yukitaka's funding ceased that Papa's lifeline as a researcher was cut off. I remember him telling me that when I was little. But that was just Papa's perception. Yukitaka must have had his reasons. But that's all in the past anyway. I don't hold any grudge against Yukitaka. Although Papa did take Mama and me back to his home in Aomori so he could devote himself to his research without worrying about money, maybe that was a sign that he'd already lost hope. Of course, I know that Yukitaka had his reasons. Papa told me that he might have pulled his funding because his company was facing financial issues. That's why I don't intend to hold him responsible for what happened.
じゃあ相対性理論超越委員会の研究の内容が何だったかは知ってるかい
There's something strange in his voice. As if sorrow, anger, and nostalgia were all blending into one. And I find myself stunned at his question. I've never been told the finer details of Papa's research with Yukitaka. But Papa only ever researched one thing. I can make a pretty confident guess.
はい。知っています。
Once again, the shadow of my father looms over me. And yet,
僕と翔一そして師匠の教授の3人は定期的に会って秘密会議を開いていたあるものを作るためにね
for Papa and Yukitaka, these memories are treasured as from their early childhood,
そう
adulthood.
僕たちが作ろうとしていたのは君たちと同じくタイムマシーンだ
そうなの？すごい。子供みたい。
せめてロマンと言ってくれないか
Yukitaka told us briefly about the Transcendence of Theory of Relativity Committee. That girl looks like Suzuha almost. Wait, was it Suzuha? From the past? Because didn't she leap through a couple different timelines, right? So she could have been actually doing it, right? Seems like it could be. Papa and Yukitara's mentor, the professor, was the first to research time machines. It all began when Papa snuck a look at his notes. The dream of the time machine inspired Papa and Yukitaka to forming a group with the professor they once avoided. The group became what Papa dubbed the Transcendence of Theory of Relativity Committee. The professor had all the ideas and inspiration, but didn't have the scientific and technological means to make them a reality. Papa handled the actual R&D. In other words, the professor had the ideas, Yukitaka the funding, and Papa the research and engineering. This was how the committee functioned. In that way, it was a lot like our future casual laboratory, where our crew centers their work around Okabe. Okabe has the ideas, I construct the theories, and Ishida constructs the actual experiments. This means Papa handled both my and Ishida's roles. The parallels are obvious. Yukitaka must have realized this when he heard about the time leap machine, which would explain the complicated emotions in his voice. The next generation succeeds where his failed. Did his odd tones stem from pride or from jealousy? Of course, there's no way for me to know for sure. I may very well be oversimplifying things. He's clearly dealing with something complicated, personal feelings.
同じものを作ろうとしていたから分かることもある。いや、違うな。僕が分かっているわけじゃないか。
This may be the first time I've heard Yukitaka doubt his own words. I mean, it's the first, few hours you've met him.
どういうことですか？
多分ね。僕はそのセルンと300人委員会のことを知っている。それも2つの方面からだ。
This time, it was my turn to frown upon hearing his words.
二つの方面ってパパどういうこと？
一つ目は僕がというよりも僕たちの恩師であったその教授が知ってたんだと思う。
Was acquainted them?
教授はタイムマシン研究を極秘に行っていた。いつどこで誰から漏れるかわからないから協力者も最小限に制限していたくらいだよ。
Hold on. A long time ago, appearing in two perspectives, probably mean. For the first, I, or perhaps I should say our professor, was acquainted with them. He conducted his time machine research near the Yaps with secrecy. He kept cooperation to a minimum to avoid leaks.
正一はその方針にあっさりと賛同してたけど、僕は共同出資者が欲しかったタイミングもあったから少し困った時があったね。けど今にして思うと教授はセルンがそういうところだと知ってたんだろう。
So, I'm not sure if by the professor, when they were saying he was secretive about stuff, I don't know if they meant Suichi or the professor at that point, because I think the professor was Suzuha, judging by that picture of the silhouettes. But in other words, he had remarkable foresight. But then there were cases like Okabe. It's difficult to tell where the truth actually is. But then they just said he again right there.
では二つ目っていうのは何なんですか
？300人委員会のことだよ。これも正確にはそのものを知っているというわけじゃないけれどね。
Again, I couldn't help but be puzzled by Taka's words. Seeing the questions written on my face, he spoke with a gentle smile.
クリスチャン、君からすると秘密結社というのは現実離れしてフィクションじみた大層なものなんじゃないかい？
I wasn't able to come up with a reason, a response to the bizarre inquiry. Though it seems he expected my reaction. I mean, in reality, it is foolish to think that secret societies do not exist. I mean, there was the secret society of like the Freemasons back in the day, which we know of now, but apparently they were secretive then. There's also other like secret orders that have existed through time that we've uncovered and stuff like that. Some of the intelligence agencies that governments have been secret societies. Like, wasn't MI6 like really secretive and like no one knew about it until like a certain year, and then people were like, oh, this is an intelligence agency. Like, hell, even the US government currently has a secret black ops like organization that does like off the record stuff, and like we know about it only because there's a literal fund, like it's like the black account or something, I think it is. It's something like that. Something real ominous sounding that is literally for like things that cannot be named or like listed for secretive like purposes and stuff like that. So we know stuff's going on behind the scenes. Whether or not that's a secret society, you could argue that no, necessarily it's not. It's just a group that is secret. It's not like a society, you know, but you know, there's plenty of stuff that could be happening, you know, especially with things that are coming to light recently, how all the upper elites have been caught in a sort of criminal ring, so to speak. but shit like that actually exists in the world. Like, just hidden criminal organizations that we can't find. It's kind of like a secret society, right?
実はね、秘密結社っていうのはありふれた珍しくもなんともないものなんだよ。僕くらいの実業家にとってはね。
Yeah, true. I don't even know what I'm up against. Faced with the reality of this statement, my brain retreated to one of my regular at-channel references. Sensing my inability to process what I was hearing in my blank expression, Yukitaka explains himself more simply. Essentially, it boils down to this. Long ago, before the Industrial Revolution, the publication and distribution of information was far more costly than it is now. Additionally, with society's rapid advancements and the associated increase in business opportunities, merchants realized that traditional business methods were fast becoming obsolete. Perhaps the greatest change was the unprecedented demand for banks just before the start of the Age of Exploration. This demand transformed the economy entirely. That marked the end of the old way of doing business. Small range, small scale, small margin businesses were on their way out. Faced with a changing world, the wealthy, in order to protect their profits, searched for ways to construct unions to mutually benefit one another. But these weren't like national unions. These organizations were closed off from the majority of society. Some of them kept their very existence a secret in order to protect their members and activities. These organizations later became known as secret societies. Naturally, there are non-economic secret societies too. For example, Italy's famous Sicilian Mafia was originally a rebel organization that fought against oppression from the mainland. Moreover, the Knights Templar, a centerpiece of numerous conspiracy theories, is not an actual secret society. The belief that the Templars operate in secret to this day is largely due to France declaring members of their order heretics. Outside of France, however, they operated in plain sight. Most notably in Portugal, where the king became a member of the Knights Templar, unifying the country and organizing as one. In other words, present-day Portugal is the Knights Templar. One can hardly call Portugal a secret society. The Soviet Union, which collapsed before I was born, was originally a secret society, a society that sparked revolution and turned itself into a nation.
君たちは知らないだろうけれど、未だに秘密結社はたくさんあって、それは世界を動かしてる。でも、それは別に特別なことでも何でもない、当たり前のことなんだよ。
Yeah, like any kind of group that wants to overthrow a government would in fact be a secret society, because you're not going to advertise that until you're ready to put your plans into action. So you secretly recruit things. Now, the secret society doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stay secret permanently, because at some point you will be revealed. It's just that you're secret until your goal is within fruition, I suppose, would be the thing, right?
理解しているかどうかわからないけれど、君たちのラボだってある意味では秘密結社だ。それをまず認識すべきだよ。
I mean, true. I feel like if the police got wind of the crazy gadgets Okabe was making, like that flamethrower salsa thing, they'd be like, no, sir, you need to come with us, please. To be honest, his words shook me. I'd always thought secret societies were nothing but delusional fantasies thought up by conspiracy theorists and shunibyo. But apparently, there are many secret societies influencing the government of developing countries simply by voting. Of course, there are still many profit-seeking secret societies whose ambitions don't extend beyond wealth.
300人委員会という結社がその意味でどのぐらいのランクに属する組織かはわからない。ビジネスで言えば喧嘩を売るべきではない相手だ。向こうの目的も規模も手の内もわからない。特に考え方がわからないのが一番痛い。もしかしたら互いの利益の落としどころを探って和解できる相手かもしれないのに、それもわからない。
Ferris's question is ripe with concern. In response, the corners of Yukitaka's lips curl up.
けれどね、僕は僕たちの町であるこの秋葉原でこんな自分勝手をした連中を許せない。彼らには多少なりとも報いが必要だ。
At that point, I finally understood. Yukitaka was angry.
おや、少し失礼するよ。
And this is where he sells us out for profit, right? Hell yeah. As he answers the phone that rang abruptly, Yukitaka dons a slight smile. Then he addresses us as he hangs up.
どうやら手がかりがつかめたようだ。君たちの言うラウンダーという連中の一人を捕まえたよ。
Is it Shining Finger?
捕まえた。
Akabe had said that the Rounders killed Mayuri, and we captured one of those relentless murderers. What kind of man is Yukitaka? It feels like we're stepping outside of reality. Maybe all this is a dream. No, I can't think like that. I need to stay rooted in real life. And at this point, I didn't care if it felt like I was living in some manga. To me, Yukitaka's words seemed like the light at the end of the tunnel. According to Yukitaka, this is what happened. While his manager buddy was in a bar thinking of a plan, a man bound in rope suddenly appeared lying on the ground out front. This man showed signs of severe physical trauma and was trembling in fear. As they interrogated him, he started to talk openly about being a rounder. The one who brought the man to the bar was a woman with braided hair, aka Suzuha. According to the barkeeper, she took off on a bicycle without so much as a word after she dropped her captive out front. The identity of this woman is unknown. Regardless, this provided us with new information about the Rounders. Given that the woman offered him up like a present, it's possible that it may have been a trap, however. Still, the man revealed that the Rounders are divided into independent groups, completely unaware of the other Rounders' operations. The captured Rounder also told us that someone named FB is in charge. FB doesn't give the Rounders orders directly, instead choosing to operate through their underlings. Their objective, originally, was to secure an old PC called an IBN 5100. As of yesterday, the man told us a special Rounder task force from France had entered Japan. Their objective was to raid the Future Gadget Laboratory, seizing the Time Loop machine and its developers. As for the captured Rounder, his division was told to spread across Akihabara to prevent said developers, namely the lab members, from leaving the city. He also confirmed our fears. Mayuri and Hashida had been captured by the Rounders and taken away, though the man doesn't know where exactly.
君たちの作ったタイムマシーン、タイムリープマシーンか。そちらは別動隊が確保する予定だったそうだよ。ただ警備会社に知り合いがいてね。大檜山ビルは警備させている。それで様子を伺っていたのかもしれない。
Which means coming to Ferris's home was the right choice. Incidentally, if the Rounders were already there and abducted Mayuri and Daru, why did they not take the time loop machine then? Staying at the lab could have led to a confrontation with the Rounders coming to take the time loop machine. I shuddered to think about what that encounter would have ended like.
マユシーとダルニャンは一体どこに連れて行かれたの？
Ferris was driven to tears by her father's story. It doesn't seem like she can just stand by knowing that her friends are in danger. But it seems like she had no choice or no idea what to do.
その FB ってラウンダーさえ確保できたら。
To think out loud, knowing full well how difficult that would be, we didn't have anywhere close to the amount of information we needed. We don't even know if this FB is in Japan or not.
こんな時に橋田がいれば。
Isn't FB Mr. Braun? I know I'm asking for the impossible, but I'm sure that Hashida's excellent hacking would be able to find us a loophole. Hacking isn't solely or remotely accessing the device or source of information on the computer network. It's about seeing through the opponent's security or passwords or outwitting someone else to find a route in. In that sense, Hashida might have been able to come up with a unique approach to the mess of a situation we're in, one that would defy the Rounder's predictions. But he isn't here. It's ironic that we need Hashida's skills in order to find Hashida himself. His contributions to the time leap machine were immense. He was a necessary component of our lab, just in a different way than Okabe. I try to brainstorm, but I can't come up with anything good. Yukitaka picks up the phone once more.
どうやら今の僕たちでは手に負えない事態のようだ。
In a way, he sounded a little defeated, but his expression was not that of someone who had given up.
パパどうするの？
ちょうどいい。ルミホにも改めて教えておこう。自分ではどうしようもないときは、誰か信頼できる人間に力を借りるのがビジネスの鉄則だ。ちょうど僕がついさっき元締めに力を借りたようにね。人間はその個人だけで完結した存在じゃない。一人の人間の周りにはその人間を取り巻く人々がいて、社会があって歴史がある。
And this, in just a few sentences, is what Steins Gate is like all about. Okabe finally being like, hey guys, like, shit's fucked. I need help to, like, change the past to make it better. Because every time he tries to do it alone and shoulder the burden himself and, like, hide what he knows from other people, he ends up not being able to change the future he wants, right?
その人間が過去から積み重ねてきた経験も、周囲にいる人々も、生まれ育った環境も、全部ひっくるめてその人になるんだ。道を示してくれた教授がいて、正一がいて、ルミホがいて、この秋葉原の街があって、今ここに僕がいるようにね。
Yukitaka continues to say this as the same for CERN and the Committee of 300. No matter how powerful an entity may be, each is not completely disconnected from the rest of the world. At least some of their numbers must have family members. They must have connections to their country, their land, or other human beings. What is this map? It's of Europe, and then there's like off-coast lights? What? Huh. Even America, for all its military might, cannot act unrestricted with the modern international society. That's arguable. Even the numerous dictatorships that existed through history have connections. However cruel a tyrant may have been, they were not always able to exert their will 100% of the time. And this is where their weakness lies. If the Committee of 300 is some kind of European organization, that must mean there is also Indian and Middle Eastern secret societies. Japan, China, and Russia also have organizations and industries that can impact their international community. If those organizations can be led to mobilize in some way, even if we can't make CERN or the Committee of 300 abandon or change their plans, this might be able to restrict them into making adjustments.
もちろん、その結果が僕たちの望む結果につながらない可能性はある。それでも、何もできずにただ座っているよりはマシだ。
And with that, he started making calls. He mostly conducted his business in English, but occasionally would use languages I didn't understand.
お嬢様、牧瀬様。
Ferris and I were just sitting there watching him place phone calls in his days. But Kuroki's words snapped us out of our reverie.
こうしていても体力を無駄にするばかりです。今のうちに少しでもお休みください。
でも
I can understand Kuroki's perspective. If Yukitaka intends to relay his connections to take action, there really isn't much those two can do. However, given the situation at hand, I just didn't feel like resting.
クーニャン、黒木の言う通りだよ。少し休んで。
Ferris says as she pulls my arm.
でも
クーニャン、分かってる？今自分がどれだけひどい顔色してるか。京馬と同じだよ。休まないと。
Huh? Pale? I didn't realize it myself, but I must look pretty tired for Ferris to bring it up. Now that she mentions it, I guess I did stay up all night. Didn't even have dinner. To top it off, there's the summer heat to deal with, coupled with a dire situation that's a recipe for fatigue.
京馬やマユシダルニャンが大変な状況なのにクーニャンにまで何かあったらどうしようもないよ。京馬を助けるためにもクーニャンは元気でいないとダメ。
Hearing it out loud, I finally realize how irrational I am being. Ferris is absolutely right. I can't do anything for Okabe or Mayuri if I've collapsed. Reluctance, uncertainty, and hesitancy fill my heart. But I am a researcher who values reason above all else. So I should act accordingly.
分かったわ。フェイリスさん、黒木さん、ありがとう。少し休みます。
Maybe eat something first?
岡部様のお隣に寝室を用意してあります。ご案内いたしますのでこちらへ。
何かあったらすぐに知らせるから安心してクーニャン。
お願い。
After I thank her, I follow Kuroki-san to my bedroom and...
クーニャン
Well, that's a strange new nickname. I couldn't sleep. Either my body and soul were completely exhausted, my mind was still wide awake. And I can't fall asleep no matter what I do. Tossing and turning in bed, I try all sorts of...
マユリ、
Kurisu's really long-winded.
明日。岡部。
Staying still only invites unpleasant thoughts. Imagination runs wild with worst-case scenarios, making my body stiffen. I keep trying to shake the thoughts out of my head. I sigh. All I want to do is help my friends, but I don't have the ability to actually do that. For now, I need to place my hope in Yukitaka, and make sure I'm rested up when we have some leads to follow. Now I understand that. I should understand it at least, but it doesn't help. Not at all. I'm face to face with my own helplessness, my lack of experience.
自分ではどうしようもないときは誰か信頼できる人間に力を借りるのがビジネスの鉄則だ。
Maho? Yukitaka's words from earlier echo in my head. Those words were meant to explain our next steps to us, but also to give us fair warning. There's always a possibility that we can screw up and make things more complicated. If our impatience got the best of us and we stormed out just to be captured by the lingering rounders. All of Yukitaka's planning would go down the drain. There's really nothing we can do. Our only option is to rely on Yukitaka, and the best way to help him is to stay put. This is how it should be, but
私は結局何もできやしないまま。
I'm embarrassed by my own maturity. I'm wishing for power I hadn't earned like a child. People should strive to achieve whatever they can, within the range of their abilities and experiences. By running society in this way, each individual would be able to find their niche. If everybody had equal limitless power, human individuality would be meaningless. I lived in America, where different cultures were adopted and accepted and celebrated. I know how dull a world without differences can be. But at the same time, there is also true that I haven't matured enough to simply accept my place in a rigid society.
教授や先輩ならその未熟さも君の個性のうちだとか言うんでしょうね。未熟なうちしかできないことがあるって。
As I vocalize my thoughts, I realize something. Professor's an upperclassman. Once again, Yukitaka's words echo in my mind.
人間はその個人だけで完結した存在じゃない。一人の人間の周りにはその人間を取り巻く人々がいて、社会があって歴史がある。その人間が過去から積み重ねてきた経験も道を示してくれた教授がいて、正一がいて、ルミホがいて、この秋葉原の街があって、今ここに 僕はいるように
I
ね。
sit bolt upright in bed.
そうだわ。
Just as Yukitaka had his connections, I have my own. While I may come from a different background and age group than Okitaka, I am not alone. Papa and Mama, Ferris, Okitaka, Kuroki, my professors and upperclassmen at Victor Country University, yada 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 yada. There are many people around me, and if Yukitaka can reach those people, I can too. It's just after 11 p.m. now, meaning it's morning in America. I quickly made a list of people to ask for help. Given the time of day, I could only come with 1 or 2 people, though. But then I realized something.
今日確か教授の講演会の日だ。
My timing couldn't be worse. One of my former teachers is presenting his research results to professors from other universities today. That alone is going to make him extremely unlikely to be answering phone calls or checking emails. What's worse, I couldn't even get a hold of my upperclassmen, who normally picked up in no time. I have no other personal contacts at Victor Condria.
なんてこと。どうしてこんなタイミングに。
Then I remember something that Okabe said.
まるで世界の意志がマイルの死を望んでいるようだった。
Will of the world, time paradoxes. Is it possible that I'm also under the influence of this so-called will of the world? Okabe said that even if the Rounders did not directly attack, Mayuri will, for some reason or another, die. No matter how many times he repeated that day, no matter how many things he tried, it was imminent. The will of the world, natural providence. Okabe told me he felt something that could only be described as fate. Is this the same force that keeps me from reaching out to anyone for help, no matter how hard I try? Is it the will of the world, as Okabe called it, hindering my actions? No, it can't be. I refuse to accept that idea that we live in a predetermined world. The idea that our fates are set is too absurd to believe. Meaning that something is behind this phenomenon, and if so, we can find out what the situation is and resolve it to escape this hellish situation.
問題はどうすればその原因を特定できるのか。どうすればそれを取り除けるのか。
Is it even possible for me to solve on my own? I tightly gripped the cell phone that I used to place my calls. Try as I might, I couldn't come up with a good idea. No sooner had I caught a glimpse of hope than it faded away. If this were mere research, I could simply walk away, knowing that discovery is a slow process, but this is not that time.
どうしたらいいの。
I half opened my cell phone, absent-mindedly, and see a certain word in the contacts list. Papa. I tried contacting him a few days ago, but he refused to talk to me. But right now, I needed someone's help. Anyone's help. And if that person was Papa, then so be it. I entered his number and pressed call.
出ないか。
But no answer.
そうよね。
Of course.
どうせ
Nobody would pick up at this
この時間
hour. Or it might be because it's me.
それとも私
Papa doesn't like me. No, he may as well hate me. There's no way he would answer his phone for the likes of me. I close my cell phone and unconsciously pull myself upright. Then I proceed to exit the guest bedroom and gently open the door to the next room over. This room is also as dark as the previous one. From the sound of his breathing alone, I knew who was in here.
岡部。岡部。ごめんなさい。
What should I do? Kabe is so worn out. He suffered so much for so long. I want to save him, but I don't know how. I don't know what to do for the person I love. I'm completely at a loss.
何が天才よ。私なんて。
I'm confident that I've been working my hardest the whole time. I've done everything I can, and have even produced results. But at this moment, none of that has any meaning. I can't make Papa happy. I can't save my friends. I'm useless to the one I love. I gently touch Okabe's cheek. It feels like he's lost weight somehow. He might have burned an extreme amount of calories, working his brain at such high capacity after receiving his future memories. Or maybe it's because after dashing out of the lab, he ran all around Akihabara in desperation. Either way, it's a painful sight.
ごめんなさい。私こんなにも無力だ。何もできない。
I notice tears falling from my eyes. They land on my hand and drip down, wetting my fingertips on Okabe's cheek.
だね。嘆くな。辛いのは、一番辛いのは岡部なんだから。
That's right.
私がここで泣いちゃう。
The one who's in the most pain, who has suffered the most heartbreak, is the one who has witnessed Mayuri's death over and over again, Okabe. But that means... An image emerges in the back of my mind. The time loop machine. The time machine built under Okabe's direction. Right now, I can't think of a way to save Hashida and Mayuri. But what if I change the past? What if I use the time loop machine to get us out of this situation?
ダメね。
I don't fully understand under what rules and logic are involved in traveling through time and changing the past. So far, through our Gmail experience, we've learned that modifying past events can significantly change the world. However, most of us cannot perceive those changes. All of this information comes from Okabe, the only person with his reading Steiner ability. If he were lying about this or simply deluded, this hypothesis would collapse immediately. That said, the reason we've come this far is because I believe in his abilities and claims. They're the basis of the time loop machine, after all. Even then, changes in time are very subjective and vague, and only Okabe is capable of observing them. In other words, even if I were to change the past, only Okabe would notice. If I changed the past, my memories would be erased the moment the world changed. And if they were, Mayuri's life were put in danger again, I would not have the knowledge to keep her from dying. Given that she's already died over and over, it seems especially risky. The bottom line is, under the current circumstances, changing the past doesn't make sense without Okabe's involvement. Without the reading Steiner, changing the past is essentially meaningless. Only Okabe can do this, which would mean the burden is entirely on him.
いずれにせよ、岡部への負担が大きすぎる。何か他の手を考えなくちゃ。
After muttering that to myself, I realized that the frustration I'd been feeling just a moment ago has been somewhat alleviated. I still feel a little impatient, but it isn't clouding my thoughts anymore.
あんたの顔を見たおかげかもね、岡部。
I try to joke, but there is a ring of truth in my statement. Suddenly, exhaustion and sleepiness come crashing down on me.
戻った方が良さそうね。一眠りして状況を改善するためのアイデアを考えなきゃ。
I quietly move away from Okabe so that I not to wake him up, then return to my own bedroom next door. The next morning, after waking up from a good night's sleep, I lightly freshen up my appearance and head to the living room. There I see the exhausted Yukitaka, who seems to have stayed up all night making phone calls, and Kuroki, who stood by his side in support. The news is on the big screen TV, perhaps to provide them with an alternative sources of information.
ああ、クリスちゃん、おはよ
おはようございます。どんな状況ですか？
う。あまり思わしくはないね。
It seems that Yukitaka has infiltrated the Rounders organization through negotiation and compromise. He's been able to learn the location of several lower-level members, as well as a few agents that pass orders along between them. In some cases, he's even been able to capture them, but he's yet to obtain any information regarding FB or Mayuri and Hashida's whereabouts.
どうやら予想以上に彼らにとって今回の行動は重要な価値を持ったものだったみたいだね。情報の隠蔽や迅速な行動からそれが伺える。
In front of Yukitaka lay several documents and maps with numerous red markings on them. A quick look revealed that these were not only maps of Japan, but of the Far East, Southeast Asia, America, Europe. They were large-scale maps, as well as more detailed ones. Several points have been marked as predicted locations, some of which, it seems, had already been investigated.
普通はここまでやれば反撃に出るか交渉に出るかしてくるものだけどね。
According to Yukitaka, the fact that they hadn't done either indicates how high priority their mission is. Sometimes, when prioritizing a single objective, an organization will consider all related losses necessary in order to its success. Yukitaka said that the Rounder's response, or lack thereof, to his actions was in line with his strategy. For CERN, the Rounder's governing body, and the Committee of 300 who controls them, gaining sole control of the time machine must be an uncompromising goal. If one can control time, they can manipulate the past and redo any and all operations until their success is ensured. For them, nothing's impossible. As I said before, this is the power of a god. Who in their right mind would simply hand it over to someone else? If they wish to establish themselves as rulers of the world, their stance in a matter of course. And the problem is that puts the rest of the world in a major disadvantage. Unsurprisingly, Yukitaka is no longer calm and collected.
おじさま。
圧力をかけ続けてはいるけれどあまり芳しくはない。このまま300人委員会と真正面から渡り合うのは得策じゃないが。
Although he said this, his expression told me that he hadn't ruled out the idea.
パパ、
ああ、ルミオ、おはよう。
Ferris made her way into the living room and seemed to grasp what was going on by just looking at him. Sitting beside Yukitaka, she leans forward towards him and embraces his arm.
心配をかけてしまったか。でも、パパはまだ大。
Ferris looked conflicted. She's so worried about Mayuri, Hashida, and Okabe that she can hardly stand it, but she's also worried about her father working himself to the bone to save them. Perhaps Yukitaka is the type to push himself, whether fighting for his daughter's friends or for his beloved town of Akihabara. There are certain things he can't back down from. So it seems Ferris is worried that he'll push himself beyond his limits. At the same time, maybe he can't save Mayuri and Hashida without Yukitaka doing that. I imagine this is quite the dilemma for her.
ありがとう、ルミオ。
Said Yukitaka as he caressed her face and he reached. Why is this even here? This is not necessary. A piece of news appeared on the flat screen TV.
次のニュースです。本日未明、葛西臨海公園の近くの海でワゴン車が1台海の中に沈んでいるのを釣りに来ていた会社員が発見しました。
The TV shows footage of the Tokyo Bay. As the footage continues, a box-shaped van is pulled out of the water by a crane. The crane slowly moves the van over towards land and places on a blue tarp. For some reason, this makes me incredibly uneasy. I don't like it. Are my nerves being hypersensitive? Unpleasant thoughts go back in my head. The thoughts I don't want to think, but I can't keep it. Can't help it. Blah.
車内からは10代と思われる女性の遺体が発見されており、警視庁では身元確認を急いでいます。
The corpse of a teenage female was found inside the vehicle. Police are now rushing to identify the corpse. The inorganic and motionless voice of the newscaster resonates from the TV, and then some of the items left in the car were displayed on the screen. Ferris stands up without a word, her eyes wide open as she witnessed something unimaginable. The throbbing sound pulses loudly in my ear.
そんな。
On the screen were the recognizable hat and green cell phone, both of which belong to someone we know very well.
嘘よ。
Farah shakes her head like a child would. I don't want to accept this. I can't. This is something I should have been prepared for. After what Okabe told me, I should have predicted this. But neither of us were able to accept it. There was no way we could. Ferris and I were both so stunned that we couldn't take our eyes off the screen. That's why we didn't realize. Uh-oh. Guess who's up? That he had woken up and entered the living room. I turned around to face the voice behind me. There was Okabe, whiter than a piece of paper. Holding his head in his hands, he drops to his knees as if to repent. Hearing him scream as if his spirit had been torn in 1,000 pieces, I understood for the first time humanity's ability to vocalize such grief. But at the same time, his lament made me accept the indisputable reality of our friend's death. Okabe's scream was evidence that Mayuri really was dead. Up to this point, I'd been deluding myself into thinking that those items they'd found on the corpse were all fake. That way, I'd be able to say that I couldn't accept Mayuri's death until I saw it with my own eyes. But I was just lying to myself, pathetically trying to obscure the truth, the opposite of what a scientist should do. That's right. I understood that the moment I saw the hat and cell phone on the scene, that our precious ally, our friend, was gone from this world, that I would never see her again. But I couldn't accept that. Not like this. That's why I tried to say it was fake, to separate it from reality, to fool myself. But that's nothing more than shallow folly. The reality is before my eyes. The truth stands before me. I know that. I understand that. I accept it. She's gone. Mayuri is gone. At the same time, I can't allow myself to be lost in grief. Both because the scientist inside me wants to maintain control of the situation at hand, and because I'm in the presence of someone in a much deeper state of grief. Beating his head with his fists and crying, Okabe continues to wail. I grab his hands, hoping to get him to stop hitting himself, but he quickly breaks out of my grasp. He screams into the void, cursing the Rounders and CERN. His screams held such pain. It felt as though they could tear apart the heart of whoever heard them. No matter how much pain his listeners felt, his pain was worse. I couldn't take it. I hated seeing the person I loved reduced to this. Seeing the person I love in such pain. Is there something I can do for him? Anything? Why can't I help alleviate this pain? Helplessness and despair consumed my heart. These are not my own feelings. They're Okabe's. His voice alone filled me with his agony and grief. Ferris and I couldn't do anything for Okabe but embrace him. It was all we had left in us. Hiroki-san extends his hand. Suddenly, Okabe slumps to the ground unconscious, just as he did yesterday. Kuroki, please!
こう連続で眠らせるのは良くないのですが、このままの方がよほ
Said
ど
the same
危
thing
ないかと
yesterday,
思
man.
い
Come
ます
on. He needs to be awake. We simply hold on to Okabe in silence, shaking our heads. Kuroki seems apologetic, but he provided Okabe with more peace than we could. We have no right to object. This is how useless we are. our combined experiences, my genius status. None of that means anything right now. Just as Okabe laments being unable to save Mayuri, I am unable to save Okabe. I can't even start to ameliorate? What does that word even mean? Ameliorate his pain. Goddamn. Kurisu and her big words. God damn it. If only I had Okabe's reading Steiner ability, I could use the time leap machine and change places with him. But even that is nothing but a wish.
Okabe. Okabe.
I hold on to him, muttering his name over and over as he's done with Mayuri only moments before. I can sense Yukitaka and Kuroki concerned eyes on me. This is all I can bring myself to do. My cell phone rings and snaps me out of it. I open my cell phone automatically and press the pick up button.
Papa.
Mata.
お願いパパ岡部を助けて岡部
何を
助けてお願い私じゃ岡部好きな人を助けることができないの
Feeling useless and awash with despair, I break down. Sobbing and crying the moment I hear Papa's voice. Not because of the trauma, trepidation, and fear I associate with him, but because I heard the voice of one who loved me and watched over me as a child. And Papa, taken aback by my tears, seemed like he couldn't even begin to get mad or scold me. Though it was only much later that I realized this. I don't remember most of our conversation, but I was probably babbling incoherently. The overwhelming stress, the years of friction between Papa and me, and the hopelessness of being unable to save Okabe drove me to close the infantile regression. I'd let my emotions run wild, something I would normally try to avoid in front of Papa of all people. What I do remember is that I repeated Okabe's name and help over and over. Neither my dignity as a scientist nor my appearance and manners as a member of society remained intact. I was simply overflowing with raw emotion. It's a wonder I was able to communicate anything at all. During this time, I was amazed that Papa was actually patiently listening to me. Maybe my usual behavior convinced him that something really was wrong. He may have tried to interject at one point or another, but if he did, I didn't hear it. He certainly didn't hang up on me, at least. By the time I began to come to my senses, I had been venting my emotions to Dad for more than 20 minutes, and at that point, I was just sobbing.
お願いパパ
まったく忌々しいやつだ。なぜこの私がそんなことをせねばならんのだ。見ず知らずの人間を助けろだと。
My heart grows cold, as if he'd stabbed me with a sword of ice. Time seemed to stand still. I forget how to breathe for a moment, and my lungs struggle with oxygen.
ちょっと失礼。
As I struggled to wrap my head around my father's response, Yukitaka took my phone from my hand.
正一、久しぶりだね。少しは友人に連絡をよこしたらどうなんだい？
Still stunned, I watched Yukitaka talk to my papa. Between Papa's cold words and my worry over Okabe, I didn't have it in me to do anything else.
クーニャ
Ferris comes over to me and gives me a hug. But because I still haven't regained my cool, I hung on to her.
フレディさん私
今はパパに任せた方がいいよ。京馬は黒木に運んでもらったから。
At Ferris's words, I look around the room and realize that Okabe had disappeared. Apparently, Kuroki had taken him back to his room from the night before.
今の京馬にはこれ以上は辛すぎるから。
It was as if I had half reverted to a child. Okabe's reaction earlier had done something to me. I could hardly bear to witness it. Something in Okabe's mind must have just snapped, worn out by the horrors he had witnessed. To cope with trauma like this, people often become numb and nihilistic, or mentally destroy themselves in their grief. Even though, either case, the outcome is the same. They lose who they once were. Okabe was simply... Fuck. No, sorry. Okabe was simply experiencing the latter. The weight of his grief has even deeply impacted me, and I'm only feeling his suffering by proxy. I never thought anything other than my father could make me give in to my emotions like this. But what I'm going through speaks volumes about the tragedy that Okabe has experienced.
ねえ、クーニャン。
Ferris, seeing that I've calmed down a little, speaks to me, still holding me tight.
昨日、京馬が言ってたね。何回もマユシーが死ぬのを見たって。マユシーが死んじゃうのを止めるために何度も時間を飛んだって。
Ferris gently caresses my head and keeps quietly talking to me, patting my back from time to time.
じゃあ、同じように時間を遡ったら、マユシー、助かるよね。
Bringing a friend back to life. If there was a way to do so, people would reach for it, no matter the cost. Making a time machine the forbidden fruit. I, as a scientist, I understood the weight of what she was asking. But even so, there was only one way I could answer.
助かるわ。まゆりは必ず助かる。私がそうしてみせる。
Perhaps this is how Okabe felt when he witnessed Mayuri's death. My logic and ethics are pushed aside by the dangerous allure of the time machine. Even if I have to risk everything, if there's a way to save Mayuri, I'll find it. No matter how grave a sin it may be, no matter how it defies the laws of nature, if there's a means to an end, humanity will take advantage. Even if I had to give up my principles, if I can save Mayuri, to hell with them. If I can spare Okabe his pain, to hell with them. I'll bear the weight of my sins. I'll accept any punishment, an acceptable price to give her her life back, knowing full well that this defies the natural order.
Chris-chan.
Yukitaka addresses me. Still, with cell phone in hand, he's still on the phone.
翔一と話すといい。手伝うと言わせたよ。
Lies. Papa? Help? What does that even mean? Seeing my numb response to his unbelievable words, Yukitaka placed the phone on the table. Then he proceeded to turn on the phone's speaker function so everyone could hear.
じゃあ、頼むよ。
お前はいつもそうだ。人の話を聞いてるのやら聞いてないのやら。挙句他人をおだてていいように働かせる。
言っただろ。それもビジネスのテクニックのうちだよ。さあ、始めてくれ。
まったく。
While I haven't fully grasped the situation, Yukitaka and Dad are exchanging words. This is the first time I've heard Papa's voice free from anger or scorn in a long
ク
time.
リス、
パパ。
Hearing him say my name so suddenly surprises me, almost making me break out in a cold sweat. What I managed to say barely qualifies as a response.
雪高から話は聞いたが、よくわからんことばかりだ。だが、 とりあえずふざけているわけではないようだな。
He falls silent for a while. It seems he was having trouble finding his words. It's not surprising, even I had trouble accepting the phone wave when I first saw it. Between my crying and Yukitaka's persuasion, he does seem to have realized that we're not kidding. But I imagine he's finding it difficult to sort everything out in his head.
まずは根本的なところから始めるとしよう。
うん。作れたわ。と言っても肉体を。
どの理論だ？ワームホールか？それとも超高速物質を発見したのか？まさか反粒子ではあるまいな。あのエネルギーを無限大に変換するやり方もあるが、非現実的すぎる。そうなるとやはり。
Papa interrupts my story to start interrogating me. Though I couldn't tell if he was actually wanting me to answer his question or if he was just thinking out loud. It's a regular occurrence for scientists, but it was remarkably frustrating in light of what was going on around us.
おいおい正一、脱線してるぞ。
Yukitaka apparently felt the same way as I did and rebuked my father. Maybe he put me on speaker so he could support me this way.
雪高、そうは言うが、きちんと理解せねばアドバイスもしようがない。作戦すら立てられんぞ。
それには同意するよ。でも人の命がかかってる。加えてあまり時間もないんだ。
I mean, what do you mean we don't have much time? Mayuri's already dead. At this point, we're just deciding where to progress from here, right? He was clearly unsatisfied, but didn't seem unhappy. Perhaps he's taking this more seriously than I expected.
仕方のない。クリス、お前の作ったタイムマシンについて原理と状況を話せ。
Although I'm still processing what's going on, right now I certainly felt like our shattered father-daughter relationship was beginning to mend.
聞く限り、カーブラックホールの生成には成功しているのだな。
うん、できてる。どうしてそれが可能だったのかまでははっきりとはわからないんだけど。
Spent about an hour telling Papa about the time machine. I was surprised to find that after my explanation, he was able to accurately identify the time leap machine's capabilities and limitations. As we spoke, we faxed documents to each other, some of which included information that I had overlooked, so this hour was full of surprises. This is the sort of feeling I was getting while discussing things with Okabe. Given our understanding of the time leap machine and concerning CERN's moves, the conclusion we reached was fairly straightforward.
現状を鑑みるにだ。やはりタイムリープで過去に戻り、起きた出来事を変えるしかないだろう。そしてその際に、その D メールとやらも使うことを視野に入れるなら、それを行うのは、リーディングシュタイナーなる能力を持つ、その岡部倫太郎という小僧以外にはあるまい。
待って、パパ、それは無理なの。
I'd considered that plan once before. How well does the time loop machine work? How can D-mail allow us to improve our situation? Both of these questions face a single roadblock. How will what we do change the past? To my knowledge, I have not yet directly experienced a changed past phenomenon. We can only go by Okabe's reports of his experiences. Needless to say, if the past changes, our memories, knowledge, and experience will change with it. To observe that the past has changed, one must retain the memories of the pre-changed past, otherwise there's no way to confirm it. That's why only Okabe, whose reading Steiner ability can retain memories of the pre-changed past, can notice the phenomenon occurred. Honestly, I found the concept hard to believe since I first heard it. In fact, my belief is entirely predicted on my trust in Okabe. That said, we have accumulated a number of pieces of evidence pertaining to changed past phenomenon over the course of our D-mail experience. But we have none for the time leap machine. Based on what Okabe told us, it seems as though the time leap machine hasn't resulted in any changed past phenomenon. Despite Okabe's scant, vague testimony, Papa and I reached the hypothesis that changed past phenomenon do not result through the use of the time leap machine. We think the time leap machine only allows one to send themselves back through time, not to change the said past. but we can't say for certain. For example, Okabe currently is saying that changed past phenomena do not occur as a result of the time of the machine. But what if that's only because he didn't take any action that would trigger such phenomenon? Much like when we began our D-mill experience, we did not clearly understand what sort of trigger causes the changed past phenomena to occur. Given the delicacy of the situation, we cannot afford to take certain uncertain measures. In other words, just as Papa said, Okabe is the only person who can solve this. The only one who can interfere with time and actually be aware of the changes he makes. But we can't let him do so in his current state. Okabe is so worn out that he can't take anymore. I thought I explained that, but...
無理は承知だ。そんなことは分かっておる。しかしな、お前は無理を無理と言い募れば、この事態が自然に解決すると思うのか。
それは
できないことをできないというのは簡単なことだ。だがそれを突破してこそ科学の価値がある。
I don't need Dad to tell me this. It's obvious to any self-respecting scientist. What isn't possible today will be possible tomorrow. My professor at my old lab often quoted, fuck that, oh my god, Russian or like just those type of names, man. Trusovsky? I know the last thing is like Kovsky, but it's like Trosky? I don't know. His words. But be that as it may, the impossible is impossible. While there is value in overcoming the things people claim to be impossible, but optimism doesn't let people breathe underwater without the appropriate apparatus, or travel to space using a cannon. Saying things like that are impossible is nothing more than junk science.
だが正一、
As I was fumbling for a response, Yukitaka interjected.
彼女の意見には同意せざるを得ない。僕自身の見解としても彼に何かをさせるのは難しいだろう。
そう言うと思っていたぞ、雪高。
なんだって？
この私がだ。そんな初歩的なことに頭が回っていないとでも思っていたのか。見くびってもらっては困るぞ。
What is he saying? Completely at a loss as to what my father was getting at, my face goes blank.
私は誰だと思っている。その狼という小僧が憔悴しきっていることなど百も承知だ。しかし、ならば、その小僧をどんな手段を使ってでも使い物になる状態に戻さねばならん。あゆりとかいうお前たちの友達を小僧はずっと助けようとしてきたのだろう。その時の意欲を取り戻させるのだ。
Papa's comment is logical and coherent. If one ignores the sheer impossibility of the idea, that is.
無理よ。だってそれには何とかしてマユリを助けられるという糸口を見つけなきゃ。
The reason Okabe had lost all of his hope and had become so broken is because he thought Mayuri's fate was inescapable. No matter what he does or how many times he tries, Mayuri can't be saved. Conversely, if we could prove that Mayuri could be saved, Okabe may recover. But I don't see how that's possible.
マユリを助けるにはどうしたらいいか今の私じゃわからない。多分
当然だ。今のお前にそれが見えるはずがない。だが、この世の誰にもというのは間違いだ。
え？どういうこと？パパにもどうすればいいのかわかるっていうの？
何をバカなことを言っている。研究の基本は観察と考察、そして実験だ。観察なしで、お前たちからの証言だけで考察を行っているこの私に正しいかい？
Ferris, Yukitaka, and I were all puzzled by Papa's remarks.
わからんのだろう。研究において観察は重要だが、目の前にある情報を取り入れすぎるあまり、逆に物が見えなくなることもある。クリス、今のお前がそれだ。
逆に物が見えなくなる。
Papa explains. Why can't we find a clue for saving Mayuri? Because we have a severe lack of information. Why is that exactly? Because not only do we only have one source of information, but obtaining clear information from that source is very difficult. In other words, we have not been able to extract sufficient information from Okabe, the person with the clearest grasp on the situation, and as the only one who has observed it in detail. At the end of the day, neither Ferris nor I have been able to talk normally to Okabe, making us unable to obtain information we could have obtained had been in a calmer state. There's no contesting that. But Okabe has already been exhausted because of the Rounders' raid by the time we were able to speak with him. Mayuri and Hishida had been kidnapped and taken somewhere out of our reach.
パパの言いたいことはわかる。でもそれは机上の空論よ。もう岡部からは情報を聞けない。誰もそれを実行できる人なんていやしないわ。
いや、いる。
Papa speaks confidently the way he used to. I haven't heard him talk or sound like that since he answered every question I asked him on my birthday 7 years ago.
いるって。誰？それは誰なの、パパ？誰なのか知ってるの？教えて。
正確に言おう。確かに今現在は存在しない。だが過去にはいる。お前だ、クリス。お前がやるしかあるまい。本当に小僧を助けたいのならな。
過去の私？
The past, before Mayuri is kidnapped, before we encountered the Rounders. Perhaps the me that exists at this point would be able to ask Okabe and about the future and find a clue to saving everyone from there. At least according to Papa.
お前自身が過去に飛ぶのではダメだ。いや、正確にはそのきっかけを得るために一度は飛ぶ必要があるだろう。だがタイムリープマシンが時間をなぞるものである以上、それで状況を改善できないのは明白だ。どこかでその過去が変わる現象を引き起こす必要がある。ならばお前はきっかけを与えるにとどめるべきなのだ。
So in essence, Kurisu can go back to the past and talk to Okabe and encourage him to change the future, but as soon as the future is changed, she'll lose the ability to retain her memories to continue to try and change it, right? Papa's idea is for me to leap into the past and tell Okabe to rely on the past me. No matter how you look at it, we don't have enough information. And we can't extract any from Okabe. Right now, what we are needing is information and time. And even after I left to the past, we'll probably only gain an hour or two at best. Fortunately, if I try to leap to a time before Okabe tried to break the time loop machine, it may take me a while to figure out what's going on. And if I try to make a time loop repeatedly to make up for that lost time, there's a possibility that I may inadvertently trigger a change past phenomenon. If that happened, I wouldn't know whether the past changed or not because I lacked reading Steiner ability. That would render our entire plan meaningless. Just because we don't believe the time loop machine changes the past doesn't mean give us free reign to make our time a plaything. Ugh, that was a difficult one to read. Directly helping Okabe and taking steps to find a clue to solve our problem is risky, temporarily dangerous for the position. Somehow I have to convince Okabe to leap back a more magical time and have him tell the me of that time period everything he knows. If the Okabe of a better time can provide me all the information he has, that me will be able to serve as Okabe's guide. In short, the only one thing we can do: convince Okabe to go and change the past, and in the process, get him to stand back up. That's it.
そうだよ。今の京馬からはきちんと話が聞けないけど、昨日の昼間の京馬からなら話が聞けるもの。
そしてその情報があれば過去のクリスちゃんなら解決の糸口を見つけられるか。
It sounds cruel to say, but our current timeline, it makes perfect sense that Okabe ended up giving up on Mayuri. I don't blame him, but knowing Okabe, if his past self finds out about what happened in this timeline, he will shut down. If that happens, we'll fail all over again. But even if that does happen, I can't blame him. The shock would be overwhelming for anyone. That's why we must eliminate all possibilities that may lead to this.
前には類いまれな知識がある。お前には類いまれな理論がある。お前の持つものを総動員して小僧に道を与え助けろ。それはお前にしかできない。その場所にいるお前にしかできない。
Only I can do this. Standing here. August 13th, 2010, Akihabara. In this place where I worked with Okabe as lab member 04.
わかった。
その上で他にも問題がないわけではない。計画の遂行時は過去のお前にこの高等無形な話を信じさせる必要がある。
That's right. Even if it was able to invigorate Okabe, if he can't receive the support from past me, this will all be for naught.
どうすれば過去のお前がこんな話を信じると思う？
I run simulations in my head. If he were to tell me about the current situation without the despair he had exhibited earlier,
信じない。
there's no question it would probably laugh it off with a cool story Otsu, or give it a second, not give it a second thought. Frankly, it sounded like convincing myself is the biggest problem of all. I know myself, of course I can do it. But if I were to go back and tell myself the same story, I still wouldn't believe it. It has to be Okabe. But how can I make my past self believe Okabe's words?
何か秘密とかないの？首筋に星型のあざとか。
ないわよ、そんなあざ。
Besides, if Okabe told me the most closely guarded secret, there's a 100% chance I'd beat him up. If someone like that asked, "You like me, don't you?" I can't imagine I'd take it very well.
は、
何かあったの？
A light bulb flicks on in my head. I do have a secret, one that I rarely tell people. I gaze into the cell phone on the table as if to look at my papa on the other side.
あったわ、心当たり。多分これを言われたら信じる。
There's one secret in particular, one that leads to a soft spot in my heart, the most sensitive part of me. It's what I desire the most.
フォーク。私、フォークが欲しいの。
え？
What? When I was a kid, I wanted more than anything else. I begged Papa and Mama for it on my birthday, my personal fork. Since then, that fork became something that touched my heart, a symbol of Papa's love for me when I was little. A symbol of love that I could have received had our relationship not shattered on my birthday 7 years ago. An object inexorable for my childhood heart. That is my personal fork.
私の今一番欲しいものはマイフォークである。そういえば過去の私は岡部を信じると思う。
What the fuck, Karisu? Crickets. Papa is silent. Maybe he knows what I'm talking about, but he won't say a thing. That's just how it is.
フォーク？ああ、あれか。
Then Yukitaka opens his mouth. That? What does that mean?
黙れ、ユキタカ。余計なことを口にするな。
君が僕のところに置いてったクリスちゃんへのプレゼントのことだろ。黒木、持ってきてくれないか？
Oh wow, he actually got it for her?
おじさま？
Wait a minute. What is he saying?
ユキタカ、今その話をするな。
いい加減にしてくれ。もう預かり続けるのも限界だ。
Dad and Yukitaka continue to argue over the phone. While I tried to follow the unfurling drama, Kuroki brought out a small box. Though the colors were faded, the box was beautifully wrapped.
こちらです。
小一のやつが7年前に君と喧嘩した後、疲れ切って我が家に預けていった品物だ。娘にプレゼントを買ったのに無駄になったって言ってたよ。
Imagine showing up to a friend's house and being like, "Hey, here's this fork. Bye." What? And then imagine your friend keeping it for like 7 years or however long it was. I take the box from Kuroki and start to unwrap it. As I thought, inside the box is a fork with an adorable design.
これ
Look at fucking Ferris's little fucking cat mouth. During this heart-touching scene, she's just like, ooh, woo. Now remember, it's the one I begged Papa for. Something I've wanted for a long, long time. Something I've yearned for in my heart for a long, long time. And it's finally here. Kurusu, you could have bought a fork in all these years! Seriously, they're like $1, if not cheaper.
Papa.
I thought I would never have it. My personal fork always needed to be a peasant from Papa. But here it is now. It came to me 7 years later.
パパありがとう。
なら雪高にでも言っておくのだな。こいつが御所を大事に持っていたのだから。私は知らん。
素直じゃないね、君も。
雪高、お前はいい加減に黙っていろ。
正一、いい加減にしないと娘の死体の前で本音を言う羽目になるかもしれないんだぞ。
Papa struggled to choose his words. After a series of tiny groans followed by silence, he finally mutters,
そんなにそれが大切なものだというなら、過去のお前もそのことを持ち出せば信じるだろう。私にできるのはここまでだ。雪高、この私をこんな茶番に付き合わせたことの埋め合わせは必ずしてもらうからな。
ああ、分かってるよ。
パパ
Sensing that the call was almost over, I addressed him one last time. But surprisingly, he cut me off and addressed me.
最後にクリス、さっきの岡部という小僧だが。
あうん
ことが片付いたら、そいつを連れて青森の私のところに来い。まったくとんだ迷惑だ。直接頭を下げてもらわんと気が済まん。
With a final rant, he hangs up without saying goodbye.
パパ
ああ、
うんでもいいわ。
Somehow at this very moment, my heart felt refreshed. All this time, I thought he didn't love me. Worse, I thought he hated me, that he'd forgotten about me. Even though he's holding his feelings and emotions back, I'm still getting to see them. This may not be unconditional love, but it certainly was at one point. I examine the fork in my hand and I'm filled with the confidence that I was, in fact, loved.
会いに来いって言ってくれたし、これからよ。
Well, who knows if that invitation will still stand once the past changes. I still don't yet understand what sort of phenomenon that Okabe claims occurs when the past changes. I trust Okabe, but it's subjective, unilateral phenomenon, and as long as it cannot be observed without reading Steiner, we can do nothing more than guess at its effect. If the past changes and the reading Steiner to activate, does it mean that he travels to another parallel world, or does it mean that our world disappears? If the past changes, what happens to our current memories, experiences, and our feelings? What about each person's individual wishes and desires? If what Okabe says is true, it could be that the past changes and all current events are rewritten. But there's no telling whether that's true or not. After all, if my feelings still remain, I will definitely go see Dad. With Okabe, as he told me.
クーニャンのパパさん、京馬のことを青森に連れてこいって言ってたね。楽しみだ。
楽しみって
I raise a question, eyebrowing Ferris.
だってクーニャン、京馬のこと好きな人って言っちゃったよ。
What did she say?
だから京馬と一緒に行ったらどうなるか今から楽しみ。
That's right. Looking back, I did say that. I told Papa that I love Okabe.
助けてお願い
Yep. Ah! I grab my head and fall to the Ord's position. I said it. I really said it to Papa of all people.
なんてことよ。どうしよう。
どうしようも何も普通に連れて行くしかないと思う。
She's absolutely right. She's absolutely right, but
なんで私はこんなわけのわからないタイミングでカミングアウトしてんのよ。それも父親相手に。
まあまあ、だにゃ。
said Ferris as she patted my head. Could this be? This is the true butterfly flag? It took me more than 10 minutes to recover.
岡部。
Once Papa hung up, Ferris, Yukitaka, and I finalized our plans. But before heading over to the lab, I wanted to check on Okabe. He looks better rested thanks to Kuroki's treatment
よかった。
of hitting him on the back of the head.
せめて辛い思いだけでもせずに済んで。
I gently caress Okabe's cheek. And then Okabe shakes his head and grimaces. He must be dreaming about her. But it doesn't look like a pleasant dream.
岡部、待ってて。私が必ずその悪夢から解放してあげるから。あんたが真由里のために時間を飛んだように、私も過去に飛ぶわ。おかしいわよね。あんなにタイムマシンに嫌悪感があった私なのに。
My aversion to time machines. It was born out of my rejection of my father's obsession with them. But now I have no such aversion, especially after learning the truth of CERN's research and getting myself involved in the development of a time machine, and realizing that time travel is more than just junk science. But even putting aside my aversion, I do feel as though the time machine itself is taboo. The time machine puts godlike power into the hands of it defangs causality, allowing you to change the past and erase history as we know it. And changing the past is against my personal creed. Papa and I had a big falling out 11 years ago. I wouldn't want to change that painful event just because I had a time machine. Everything that has occurred in my life has shaped the person I am today. Losing even a single event would make me a different Maki Sakurasu. And as such, as this is true, I have no need to change the past, nor do I think the past should change, at least as far as my personal past is concerned.
だから私がこうするのは岡部、あんたがそうすると決めたから。真由里を助けるために何度も時間を繰り返すと決めたから。
Akabe said that the first time was instinctive. He said that it was the only way he could think to save Mayuri, and his body moved on its own. And once he started, he couldn't stop. Human beings are like that. That's why people shouldn't be so dependent on power or play with forces beyond their control. But knowing the circumstances around his decision, I don't blame Okabe. Besides, my beliefs are all my own, not his. In other words, the time leap I'm about to perform isn't something I'm doing myself. Rather, I'm standing in for Okabe just this once. Besides, we had no other option. And if it weren't for Papa persuading me, there's still a chance I wouldn't attempt a time leap at all. Of course, none of that is to say that I would put that burden entirely on Okabe. Ultimately, it was my decision. I can't stand seeing Okabe like this. There's no doubt that my desire to save him is a powerful motivator. Sometimes one must take action, even if it goes against their beliefs. While it is common among scientists, it's kind of situation I never wish to encounter.
でもだからこそ必ずあんたに道を示してみせる。真由里と自分と 岡部のために。
Oh, right, and for Hashida too. Though he might be able to escape on his own if he doesn't get killed.
正直言うとね、ちょっと怖くはあるのよ。だって自分で作ったとはいえ、タイムリープマシンがきちんと動く保証はないしね。あんたはそれで飛んだっていうのに、自分勝手ね、私。
Of course, it is possible the time loop machine wouldn't work properly on someone without Okabe's reading Steiner ability. It may function differently based on a person's age or gender. Newly created technology always brings with it a number of unknowns, but Okabe leapt through time for Mayuri without a single assurance. So I want to do the same.
そう。あんたのためにね。
But even with my newfound determination, I'm really scared. I can't help it, no matter how much faith I have in my theory.
だから。ごめん。卑怯だけど、私に勇気をちょうだい。
I look at Okabe's sleeping face and move closer to him. I put my hands on his shoulders and slowly draw closer, so close I can feel his body heat. Then I place my forehead against his. I bring my thoughts next to his thoughts, and we exchange breath and body heat.
岡部、好き。あんたがどれだけ中二病でも、センスのおかしな空気読めないもんでも、知識の偏った北欧神話好きでも、そんなの全然関係なく好き。クリスティーナとか女子とかセレセブとかザ・ゾンビって呼ばれるのはいい加減縮小気味だけど、そのうち必ずあんたに私の名前をきちんと呼ばせてみせるわ。真正面からね。
That was my one-sided confession to a sleeping man. A confession that was unfair in some ways, and meaningless in others. I don't expect him to respond. In fact, I'd probably never live it down if he did. And it was for nothing more than my own satisfaction. But for now, that's good enough. I don't intend on ignoring my Yuri either. I can make my official confession another time. This was just a sort of ceremony to receive the courage I needed. A ritual. With slight reluctance, I pull my body away from Okabe's. I wanted to stay with him a while longer, but I don't have a lot of time. If the Rounders decide to make a forceful move against us, it could be all over. When I stand up and look at Okabe, I can see that Okabe's once pained expression has turned into a more peaceful one. His breathing is normal and sounds heavy. Yeah, he's going to be okay.
じゃあ、岡部、行ってくるね。
I open the bedroom door and step out into the hall of the living room.
は
I saw Ferris waiting for me. For some reason, she was sighing with disappointment.
あれどうしたのフェリスさん。
I realized how suspicious I must look, given what I was just doing in there.
あ、くーにゃん。これからはヘタレーニャンって呼んでやるにゃん。
I feel my body temperature spike as my face is bright red.
フェリスさん、覗いてたわね。
覗くも何もないにゃん。それくらいジェシャーブレイクで全部お見通しにゃん。説明しよう。ジェシャーブレイクとは相手の目を見るだけで手持ちが分かってしまうフェイリスの超絶魔眼なのにゃん。はあ、それにしてもクーネンがここまでヘタレだったにゃんってびっくりしたにゃん。時間がない状況じゃなかったらテイク2って言ってやり直しさせるとこにゃん。
Who knew Ferris would be like this? She has a weird style of speech and even gives people weird nicknames. Between her and Okabe, why does Akihabara draw so many weirdos?
そんなことやってると 先にもらっちゃうね。
said Ferris with a devilish smile on her face. She looked so cute that even I might fall for her. Okabe wouldn't stand a chance.
もう冗談をやめてってば。分かってるにゃ。冗談だと安心するのにゃ。
I know that Ferris's true feelings are no joke. Even if I'm not good with people, I understand this much. But if someone told me to compete with Ferris fair and square, I'd be in real trouble. I don't have the wealth of experience I need to deal with competition like this, especially with everything else going on. I don't think I'd even have the mental capacity for it, unless we saved my Yuri and the situation stabilized.
だからちゃんと勝負ができるようにクーニャンが元通りに戻すのにゃ。もしかしてまたチェシャーブレイクで読んだ？
Could she really have some sort of psychic power? No, of course not. As a scientist, I can't accept that. But it would mean she has incredibly sharp intuition. Now I'm curious. I want to study this. I'd really like to conduct some experiments with Ferris, and it's my test subject. But I have to hold off for now.
分かってる。私はそのために行くのよ。さて、これでよし。
Before long, we had made preparations to return to the lab, where we now stood in front of the time leap machine.
クーニャン、下の大きなテレビ電源入ってるのを確認してきたにゃ。
ありがとう。これでリフターの準備も OK ね。
With that, I activate the time leap machine. Now all that's left is to enter, put on the headgear and enter the key.
いよいよにゃ。
Ferris came over and held my hand tightly.
そう。世紀の一瞬ね。
Since Okabe has already used the time leap machine, this won't be the world's first instance of time travel, but it does mark the dawn of the time travel experiments. And I'll become one of the first pioneers. The fear I felt earlier had waned, replaced by feelings of elation and curiosity. At the same time, if I time leap, my reconciliation with Papa and the gift of my personal fork will be undone. I'll be sending my current memories back to me, who exists in a time before I spoke to Papa. After that, I'll be putting all my efforts towards helping Okabe instead of reconciling with him. How's it going, Tomato? If I didn't time leap, would Okabe someday be able to accept my Yuri's death and go to Aomori with me? My mind wanders towards those possibilities, but I seal away the door of confusion with my heart. My pride as a scientist, my feeling towards my father, they're all minor compared to what's at stake. This is how it's supposed to be, right, Papa?
岡部、おゆり、明日。
It's all up to me now. The destination is yesterday around 5:30 p.m. when everything was bathed in twilight.
岡部なら昼でも夜でもない狭間の時とでも言うんでしょうね。
Twilight. Tasogare. The Japanese word comes from how hard it is to see people in the unusual lighting. People would ask one another, "Who are you?" Tazokare? I remember one of my upperclassmen in Victor Contra telling me about the mythology of his home country. Once upon a time, the god of light. Oh my god, this is so unrelevant. But in order to defeat the dragon, the god of lightning created the twilight. Enslaved, he used a weapon made of bubbles in the ocean. Another myth. Oh my god. In order to yada yada yada, defeated the demon. Okay, that's what he told me. Perhaps the moral of the myth is that when you are presented with two losing options, keep calm and think about whether there's a third. By using reason or by thinking outside the box, you can always find a third option. How oddly suited Twilight is to the untangling of mass, of causality, in order to arrive at the correct option.
なんてこんなこと考える私も相当ね。
But I suppose it's just how we are. Most scientists are just romantic chubio. Spend enough time around them, and it's only a matter of time before they rub off on you.
どうしたのな、ふーにゃん。
なんでもない。それじゃあ飛ぶわ。後のことお願い。
任せといてにゃ。
I smile at her, then put on the headgear. Electricity arcs around the air. My surroundings are consumed by a whitish-blue light. The ground shudders below my feet.
行くわよ。
I press the enter key on the keyboard. My body shakes as I'm caught in the middle of a large earthquake. It's enough to throw me into the air. I felt like my body was about to make the leap along with my memories. No, that's not what leaped. Was it the world? What is this? A ringing in my ear pierces deep into my brain like a metal pair of forceps. It feels as though the cells of my central nervous system are being torn apart in every direction, down to the atomic level. Sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, all 5 of my senses ignore my brain's signals and receive information of their own accord. And it's not just my senses. My heart starts acting on impulse, running through emotions until it feels like I'm about to burst. Yes, observe. Observe and analyze. I have to determine what this is. Extreme nausea and drunkenness erupt through me, sense of gravity grows vague, and I'm jumbled down, back and forth, side to side, up and down. The image of the world reconstructs in my brain as if an artist put it together out of shattered mosaic tiles.
そうだ。未来を思い出したのよ。私最悪の気分かも。
The world gradually comes back together. As my vision grows clearer, the mysterious sounds and sensations withdraw, and I'm awakened from a dream. Yeah, Tomato, this is, this is Steins Gate linear bounded Phenogram, which it's completely separate from, like, the anime and stuff. It is a, like, it's different stories from each character's point of view. So, like, this one particular is from Makise's point of view. The first one was from Okabe. It's just to kind of get you oriented back in the story. Then there's one for, like, Daru and then Lukako, and all the other characters, I think, have their own, like, separate story from their point of view. And it's all kind of different stuff centered around the stories, but it's pretty cool so far. Although Kurisu she thinks a lot, so there's a lot of reading. When I come to, I'm curled up into a fetal position on the floor of the lab. The rays of sunset beam through the window.
やっぱり実験はするものだわ。こんなに気分が悪いなんて。
I'll keep that in mind for later. You could ride a roller coaster over and over and not feel this sick. This is valuable data. I wonder why. Does the brain get confused by memories that theoretically shouldn't exist and force the body through a series of illusions? It can't be a simple psychological phenomenon.
岡部も言ってくれればいいのに。
At any rate, I still feel sick. This degree of discomfort would make it dangerous for anyone frail to use. They'd be consumed by it.
もしかして岡部がああなった理由の一つかしら。かなりの負荷がかかると見て良さそう。岡部、ごめん。
I managed to keep the contents of my stomach where they belong and check the time on my cell phone. August 13th, 1724. The time leap was a success. Success is a relative term. I've been in pain for about 10 minutes now. I wonder how it was for Okabe. From what I observed, it didn't look like his time leaps took much out of him. Did he get used to it? Maybe the effects vary between men and women, from person to person.
そもそも岡部にはリーディングシュタイナーがあるものね。
I sluggishly pull myself to my feet. I have to get to the bridge in front of the UPX, like Ferris told me. If she's right, Okabe should be there. We only have a couple of hours before Mayuri dies. Question, why didn't she send herself back to before Okabe got his memories back? So she had time to, like, deal with it. And then Okabe came back, and then she could have just stopped him there without him running off and having to chase after her, right? Considering it was around 7 p.m., I have an hour and a half. I have to reinvigorate Okabe and send him back to the past within that time.
でもこれしかないと分かってはいるけど、岡部をあんな目に遭わせなきゃいけない。岡部、本当にごめん。次は快適にできるよう改良するから。
To keep Okabe from getting too concerned, I won't tell him that I performed a time leap to be here. That's the rule. Let's go. Wait for me, Okabe. The effects of the time leap were unexpectedly intense. I didn't expect the road to feel this long. I can normally get here in no time. It takes all my strength just to keep my legs moving, and every breath is a struggle. Eventually, however, I make it to the front of UPX. There. Just ahead of me, I saw Okabe crouched down on the middle of the bridge. Even now, he looks so despondent. It was hard for me to believe that Okabe could look so depressed. For me, it was a mere 20 hours ago, but for him, it could have been a lifetime. Just seeing him like this nearly brings me to tears. But crying now would be meaningless. I didn't jump back in time to cry. I must reach out to Okabe. That's what I should do. Something only I can do.
ねえ岡部、あんたは一体何度恐ろしい未来の記憶を思い出してきたの？何度真由里が殺されてしまう残酷楽しげな幻想があふれるこの街の真ん中でたった一人で誰にも頼れずに心も魂も擦り切れて嘆きと絶望で壊れかけている。ごめんね。いつもあんたのことを目で追ってたのに気づけなくて一人で戦わせちゃってごめん。ねえ岡部、私はそんなあんたの姿見たくないよ。また私のことを変なあだ名で呼んでほしい。ジョシュってクリスティーナってザ・ゾンビってセレセブってムカつくけどいつか。でもやっぱり私をそう呼ぶ方がそんなあんたに戻ってほしいよ。ねえ岡部、私は今のボロボロになったあんたに道を示せるかな。手助けになれるかな。あんたを助けたい。真由里や橋田を助けたいっていう気持ちはもちろんあるけど、何よりも岡部、この思いを私は自分に対してだけはごまかす。そのために自分の心情も曲げた。10年以上も嫌われてると思ってたパパとの和解もなかったことにした。だから岡部、次は私を頼ってほしい。あんたの仲間である私を、あんたの助手である私を。そうしたら私は絶対にあんたに道を示すから。
Take a deep breath, suppressing the emotion that almost crushes my heart. I stand in front of Okabe, begging my voice not to tremble.
そこの地べたに座ってるドキュン男。
When I call out to him, Okabe slowly lifts his head. and looks up at me with hollow eyes. Vermilion Soteria. Completed. And that was Makise Kurisu's story. Nice. Enter. Alright, so from here, oh golly. Second Phenogram finished. Complete the second stage scenario. Okay. New world lines were discovered. Okay, so we got Daru, we got Suzuha, we got Mr. Braun. Okay, I was not expecting that. And we've got Ferris Nyan Nyan. Alright, and then we're gonna have others that are gonna be coming up here afterwards. So, wow, Mr. Braun gets his own story, which means Nay is probably gonna get her own story as well. I wonder if Kuroki, the butler's gonna get his own story? Maybe her dad's gonna get one? I don't know. If Mr. Braun's getting one, that's interesting. But I figured the main lab members would all get theirs, but we'll see. Alright, anyway. Since we are at the end of our time here today, everyone, we will be ending things, so thank you all for watching. If you missed anything, the VOD will be up on YouTube, and since all these VODs can't be monetized anyway, it'll be up like as soon as it's done rendering instead of a couple hours later. So I can just make them go public right away, because YouTube has this thing where they have to like check all your videos now for some reason, which like you can't have them go public right away, because if you do that you can't be monetized for stuff, which is a pain in the ass. I don't know why they decided to do this, but anyway, next week we'll continue with Daru. Yeah. You don't want to start off, if you've not seen Steins Gate before, you probably don't want to start off here and watch all this. You probably want to watch the anime first. But yeah, it's not like at the end of the anime either where this stuff takes place. It's like even before like Suzuha is revealed to be a time traveler, essentially. Except Okabe knows because he's going through time and stuff like that. But yeah, regardless. They're all like their own little contained stories. So if you like didn't catch the previous 2 episodes, starting next week on Wednesday, you can check out Daru's, because it's going to be a completely different story, not linked to the other ones. So simple as that. They're all kind of their own little contained story line, kind of. So they don't rely on the others. So even if you're familiar with the story of Steins Gate, you'll be familiar with what's kind of going on, basically. At least from what I gathered from reading the description about the game, anyway. So yeah, but anyway, to sum up, next week, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, we'll be jumping back in and playing Daru's route, seeing how long that one is. It's probably going to be really weeby and really Hackerman-y and stuff like that. It's going to be interesting to see, because I don't think Daru would go back in time. So it's going to be a little bit different. And he won't be nearly as thinking, as big-brained as Makise Kurisu is, because he's more of like a hacker weeb, so he's just going to be like thinking about cute shit in his mind all the damn time, because he's a weeb, and it's going to be great. So anyway, you can check out the VODs, like I said, on YouTube at youtube.com/PlagenShiki. You can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/PlagenShiki, for I tweet out when I go live, basically. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can come and watch it live on twitch.tv/PlagenShiki, if you would like to do that. So anyway, thank you all for hanging out, stopping by, watching this on the YouTube, whatever you decide to do. I'll see y'all next time. So, bye for now.